Welcome to, it's May 16th, after 6 o'clock, the quote ad hoc road committee. We established this ad hoc committee to determine what it is the town would like to see the road committee do. There was a lot of back and forth during the first few road committee meetings. It was really unclear what the road committee's role was. So we kind of put a halt to those road committee meetings and then to create an ad hoc committee to decide what it is the road committee should be doing, because there was much confusion going on and nothing getting done. So here we are. Can we just introduce ourselves? I'm Elise Miller, Selectman.
Paul Plant.
I'm Will Williams, Chair of Warrant and Finance.
Craig McMurray.
So, here we are. It was kind of brought up that possibly we come up with a survey that was left with Jen of very simple questions, asking the town what it is they thought the road committee's role was. And so I thought we would come up with a few of those questions here tonight.
One of the things that ought to be on the questionnaire is, what do the voters want in terms of the committee's stance vis-a-vis the commissioners? In other words, do the commissioners, are they going to be involved in this at all? And if they are, what role do they play in the committee? I guess the question I have is, do the voters want to continue the present arrangement, which is fine, of electing them directly, or do they want the commissioners to be within the town government frame and as a part of the town government that are responsible to the Board of Selectmen? And it doesn't really make any difference. Both systems work well in various parts of Maine. I just wonder if not we ought to ask the voters, do they want to continue with the present system, which is fine.
Mm-hmm. So that's totally, yeah, that's a bigger question than.
That's a bigger question.
It's a bigger question. Tom.
But it is connected.
Can I help? I was asked and initially agreed to be a part of this ad hoc committee on the condition that it wasn't an ad hoc committee, as you know, as other people know. So I approached you the other day about saying I'm stepping back, and that's what I'm going to do tonight. But I have several thoughts moving ahead, and it was my understanding that the purpose of this committee was to write an ordinance, because that was the suggestion that I had back in January as a way to proceed. I don't know where you're going tonight, but I just want to reassert my reasons for backing off and being very cautious, okay? And I'm backing off because I believe that if an ordinance is to be created, it should be created by the legislative body of the community, which is the town meeting, and that a special committee should be formed by the town meeting. Having seen the warrant for this annual town meeting, there is no mention of such a special committee, so I assume no committee is being formed and no ordinance is being drafted under those conditions. I'm unhappy with that because I think this is a town meeting job. It's not a job for the selectmen. The town meeting has decided it wants a road committee. Then the town meeting, through its special committee, should be telling the committee what it expects it to do and how it expects it to do it. That's reason number one. Reason number two is I have had a recent experience with an ad hoc committee, at which point we worked very hard and very diligently to come up with an ordinance. And after we had come through some difficulty to a satisfactory draft, which was satisfactory to everybody, of what the ordinance should be, all of a sudden an existing Board of Selectmen decided to ship it to the Selectmen's attorneys, and the attorneys came back with suggestions that had nothing to do with law, having to do with how the ordinance should be drafted to manage the body it was being managed. I had a real problem with that. It moved ahead anyway on the assumption that these are lawyers telling us we have to do this, so we have to do it. So it went into the ordinance, and I was very displeased, and I was put in the position of having been part of this committee and then having the ordinance modified before it went to the town meeting. So that's reason number 2.
When was that done, Tom?
I don't want to get into it because that raised
Just when was that done?
a couple years ago. Okay. Number 3, the reason I don't think you should proceed on an ad hoc basis and that you should proceed with a special committee is this is bad optics. All right? The reason it's bad optics is the committee may be seen as a committee of the Board of Selectmen, which it is in fact. And over the past few years, there's been, if not strain or antagonism, in the relations between the Board of Selectmen and the road commissioners. Well, I'm saying there has been, and increasingly so, all right? And in fact, to the point where a couple of years ago, we all sat in this hall while our Board of Selectmen had hired attorneys and accountants to come in here and explain to the body why one of the road commissioner positions should be abolished. The town meeting turned it down, and they did what they should do in that particular case. But I am utterly convinced that the town meeting will do nothing to resolve the issues that revolve around our road commissioners or our roads at this point, as long as there is any perception that any action of any committee taken is a result of antagonisms that have built up over time. And I think that's been demonstrated on numerous occasions by the way the town meeting has voted. What I'm saying is there is a perception in the public that the relationship between the selectmen and our road commissioners and between our road commissioners and our road commissioners has not been good, and in fact it's deteriorated over the past few years. Actually, it's getting better right now between our 2 road commissioners anyway. However, the town meeting, I do not think, will act to resolve any of those issues when they sense that some of those actions may be taken based on some antagonism. They want to see that antagonism gone, that anger gone, before they will act to resolve those issues. That having been said, have fun. Thank you. I'm going to go home now.
Do you have a couple of bullet items of, you've said basically what shouldn't be happening, what should be happening?
What should be happening is that we should be electing a special committee of the town meeting to spend the time to do the job right. And doing the job right takes a lot of time because there's a lot of public hearings involved. You have to have input from a lot of different people, and you have to build a consensus of everybody that has input into this, okay?
Wait, just a minute.
Yes.
When you say to do the job right, what job are you talking about?
Drafting an ordinance. And the process,
What would the ordinance be?
the ordinance would be an ordinance for the road committee to
Road
describe
committee
what it does and how it does it.
Okay.
Okay? And in the process of doing that, it would describe the relationships between the selectmen and all the other officers of the town and what they do. In fact, if you go back to that January 7th meeting, I passed out a sheet there where I made the recommendation that a special committee be formed to draft the ordinance. From time to time, I've heard it said that town meeting can't possibly do this. Well, folks, look back to between 2000 and 2004 when the existing road ordinance we have, that was totally done by a special committee. Actually, it was done by 2 special committees of the body. It took a time to do, but it's been effective. It's done the job. Not everybody was happy with it. In fact, there were a lot of people who were very unhappy with it. And there are still people who are unhappy with it. But when it went to the floor of the town meeting, there was not a no vote from the floor of the town meeting because the effort had been put into it to build that consensus over a period of 4 years.
That road ordinance?
The road ordinance.
The road ordinance
Right.
was built by,
Was what?
who built that ordinance?
David Cody primarily. David Cody and Andy Brazier were the principals involved in that.
And they weren't called the road committee, they were called a special committee?
No, they were the committee that was formed in probably 2001 town meeting, and it was a standing road committee. It was the reestablishment of the standing road committee. We had a special committee for 1 year to look at what needed to be done. They came back and suggested that we need a set of ordinances and listed a bunch of issues that we had to address. At the following, and they reported that to the town meeting. In a subsequent town meeting, immediately following that, the town meeting elected a special committee not a special committee, a standing committee to replace what had been the standing committee up until the time that George Mann died back in the early 90s.
Okay, because currently, we only have a road ordinance. We do not have a road committee ordinance, we do not have a
Right.
road commissioner
Right,
ordinance
right.
or job description.
That's correct. That's correct. And what my suggestion in January was to go to was the process of building an ordinance, pulls everybody together and establishes a common definition, a common understanding of what the job is of the road committee, how it does that job, and ultimately it goes to the town meeting for its approval, which any ordinance has to anyway. But that process of building the integration between the road commissioners and the people on the road committee and the town itself has to be built. You don't sit down and write a bunch of rules and expect all people, you don't expect that to work. You need input from all those people, and it takes time to build that consensus. And you want that consensus built before you go to the town meeting. And you want everybody to have an understanding, otherwise it comes apart on the floor of the town. Can I stop now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but
Questions?
No, actually, I'm sort of, as you're talking, I'm reminded that really what our first step, you know, it sort of seems like we're putting the cart before the horse because it's unclear whether we really want a road committee.
Right.
So the job one of this ad hoc committee was basically to, as I understand it, was to come up with a little more in depth as to what, I think it was 2015 town meeting where Article 8 was a question about disbanding, discontinuing standing town meeting. You know, do you want to do that, town body, legislative body, yes or no? And I was one of the folks who said, gee, it ought not to pass, because I thought that, hey, we have a tool here. Maybe we should just figure out how to use this tool, and I don't want to voluntarily just throw it away. There's probably some good there, and we need to talk about it. And I think that's kind of what our job is right now, to sort of re-poll the town body, whether or not they were present at that meeting, regardless of what they voted, if they were present at that meeting, what their opinion is now. And, you know, so do you think we should have a road committee? And if so, and I think those suggestions about bullet items is really good, you know, which of these things and maybe some others do you think they should be doing? And then figure out from that what the selectmen might want to do about an ordinance having to do with either writing or coming up with a committee to actually write the ordinance. It's good, a warrant article to do that.
Okay.
Or, you know, reassessing whether the town body still wants to keep going with it. But basically, just to get some direction, there was an intent a couple of weeks ago to see if there was something that could be put on the warrant for this year. It seemed like it was all rather premature and rushed to do anything this year on the warrant. So that's what this is kind of, this committee, ad hoc committee, is more to just find some direction, poll what the town body would like to do, you know, not usurp anything, not, you know, I understand that, you know, the road commissioners are not necessarily in favor of anything having to do with the road committee. Poll all of that, you know, eke all of that stuff out.
I don't think that has to be the case, Paul, but that's where they are right now, there's no question about that. But that
But just
doesn't have
to,
be
you
the
know,
case.
just to reassure that, you know, we're not, there's no stone throwing, there's no attempt to ramrod anything. Just figure out what the town wants to do, and then how best to do that.
I'm just worried about that perception of the stone throwing, okay? And in trying to move forward. And again, the only thing I hear in what you're saying, because I agree with 99% of what you're saying.
That's
the only thing I
excellent.
say, go to the selectmen and ask that the selectmen, again, it's town committee, it's town meeting business, it's not selectmen business, it's
Right, but the
legislative.
selectmen are the one that write the warrant. That's kind of where
Right.
it comes down to.
So
You know,
you can ask them
I don't,
about
it's
it.
been not, it has not been suggested or intimated that the selectmen are gonna write the ordinance,
Okay, that's what I.
but
that's
just
what I have in here.
that the selectmen write the warrant that then gets the ball rolling in other ways.
Sounds
Tom, I want to ask a question if I might. Both types of commissioners are available in the state of Maine. And I don't think anybody should feel, especially the commissioners, that there's a desire to change that particular type of arrangement. However, if I were a commissioner at this point in time, I would be angry because generally speaking, the boards of selectmen over the last years have not been giving monies sufficient for the commissioners to do much of the work that I think they wanted to do.
Well, I think that's part of the problem. I think
That's part of the problem. And I guess my question is, because these two commissioners were, in fact, became commissioners because of the town vote, the only thing that I see that was askance is the fact that the town vote also did not include a line of duties for them. If they want to have two commissioners and they want to be elected and accountable to the voters, that's perfectly fine.
I think that's a fine thing, and it would be a fine thing for the committee, if such a road committee came into being, to undertake, okay? I'm very afraid, though, that if you link that committee with the work of the selectmen, we're going to be right back where we are now.
But would it be working in the pocket of the selectmen if we say we like, or we accept?
We have a special committee of the town
If we
meeting.
accept this present system, but all we need from the voters, who are the ones making the decision to have the two commissioners, if we ask the voters if they would consider a list of duties for the commissioners, and then we can work around that. Right now, there's three things, as you have mentioned. We have a selectman, we have a possible committee, and we have the commissioners. And right now, no one is talking with anybody. The commissioners are unhappy because, as I said, I think that they've been allowed to sort of wither on the vine over the last few years because of tensions that were going on between the Board of Selectmen and the commissioners. I think at the same time, the selectmen are upset because they feel as though accountability can't be reached because of the fact that the voters are the ones to whom the commissioners are responsible, and that's fine too. But my problem with any system where the voters have chosen officials to do a job that they didn't at the same time vote for a list of duties for these people. And they haven't done that. And it's not up to the selectmen to do it, and it's not up to the committee to do it. It's up to the voters to perfect
And that
the
would-
system which they originally adopted.
And that would be a special committee of the town meeting to do that, to draft that.
Yes.
Again, that has to be a special committee. It can't be, or I think get very dangerous if you proceed on the basis of a committee that is being overseen by the Board of Selectmen, which an ad hoc
I would
committee
totally
is.
agree. I would totally agree on that.
The other part of the answer to your question is, Bill, an awful lot of the responsibilities of the road commissioners are laid out in state law with respect to.
There are, but not all of them.
That's
And
true.
I think the town voters have a right to look at some of the things which are done around the state and see if they want their commissioners to be involved with it.
Yeah, I don't have
And
a
there's
problem with
there's
that.
there's
All
And that, to me, is the crux of the problem right now, because the commissioners feel, and I can see their justification for feeling that way, that people are trying to put things on their list of duties, which they have no right to do, number one, and number two, they don't want to do it, because they're not getting anything out of it, because they're not getting the funding that they need for the projects that they think they ought to be doing
This
now.
goes to the heart of why it's going to
And
take a
so-
long time to build a good ordinance.
We go back to the voters, and we're not saying that, hey, this should be a town department appointed by the Board of Selectmen, as we do for the transfer station, as we do for fire and rescue. All I'm saying is, commissioners, that this is what, and the voters have already a second time reaffirmed they wanted two commissioners. That's fine. But now, if you're going to give these people the responsibility, give them their list of duties. And then we can start looking at the committee as to how the committee can advise and assist these commissioners in their list of duties that have been promulgated by the voters.
Okay, and I agree with you with this one reservation. It is not our job, or the selectmen's job, or any individual's job to tell the road commissioners what their duties are. It is an act of the town meeting in the form of an ordinance. That's
Exactly.
the only way you can do this.
Exactly.
And my concern here is in moving forward, that this is a committee that is perceived as a body of the town meeting and not a representative of the Board of Selectmen, okay? That's my concern moving
I would
forward.
agree with that. I would agree with that. But the point is that the voters have decided, and we should accept that. It's a perfectly valid way to run a town road department, is through the voters themselves and having the commissioners responsible to the voters. But the voters also have a responsibility to list the duties that they want these two people to perform. And that's where we ought to start, because otherwise we are going to never get it all straight because of people being distrustful. The selectmen want to be able to say, you're doing this, 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 and this, and if you don't do this, then we're going to get rid of you. And at the same time, the commissioner says, I need this project or that project, and the selectmen say, well, you're not going to get it because we don't have the monies for it, and you can tell your voters that we just can't do it this year. And they have no options either.
The only body that has the authority to insist upon a set of standards for the road commissioner is the town meeting.
Correct, exactly, because they created them, and therefore that should have been a part
So.
5 or 6 years ago.
I feel like, okay, we've established that the town voters choose committees, special committees.
Right.
This is considered,
Special committee, understand the term, has a duration. It's described with a purpose, okay? And then after that purpose is fulfilled by a report to the town meeting and maybe an action of the town meeting, the committee automatically dissolves.
okay.
Okay.
And
Voters
is that what happened with the road ordinance committee?
No, that was a standing committee. A standing committee exists in perpetuity once it's created until it's abolished. Okay, a standing committee goes on from year to year. A special committee lasts for the duration of the project that they are assigned.
So, you,
The committee that was done several years ago was a committee of either 5 to 10 other people, including the road commissioners. What the state wanted, you had to do your class roads. In other words, they had to do the A, B, C, D,
Yep.
and whatever, how many roads they got, what the legal bounds were, and so on and so forth. That was presented at town meeting. Town said yes, and town said yes to how many bodies were attended. It had nothing to do with the road commissioners had to do or anything else. They were invited to the board. As a matter of fact, at that time, I think Bernie Yetton was on.
Yeah,
And I don't remember if it was Gerton King or if it was one of...
Virginia Grover.
Yeah, all these people were on that
She was on the first
Andy
one.
Brazier.
Yeah, she was on the first
to
committee,
do
but
their
the
job,
first one.
to make sure it got done. And when it was done, that was it.
Yeah.
They had a specific job to do, and that was it. They didn't have, like you guys did back in 15, make a committee and then make whichever you needed to do. All it was they had to do the roads and label them, because the state wanted to know what was private, what was public, and what the grade of road was. In other words, was it 25 feet or 125 feet? And they had to work with the planning board also, once they discovered what they was doing. It was a long process, it was not slow, but it had nothing to really do how the road committee worked, the road commissioners. It just, they were involved because these were our town roads.
This was a separate
And that was a whole
act of the
separate-
road
so
committee.
where I'm at is when the town voted to keep the road committee, what did they think they were keeping?
I don't know what happened.
And that's where this survey, that's where this survey is coming from, is when you voted, what did you think you were keeping? What did you think the road committee was there to do for the town? And that's what this survey is about. And we're not gonna make an ordinance, we're not going to do job descriptions for road commissioners or road committee. We just wanna know what the town wanted when they said, don't get rid of that road committee.
And we understand
That's fine.
that it's going to be another year before that, or perhaps the next special town meeting, before that gets on a warrant to form some kind of a committee. But at least we'll know, we'll have a little more clarity, a little more direction from the town body as to what they really want.
Well, I think that, and that's why I initially said, if the town committee really wants this road committee, one of my first 3 remarks was, then they ought to be telling the town, then they ought to be telling the committee what it wants it to do and how it wants it to do it. And that was.
And that's-
Because at the time, there was no road committee ordinance, no road committee job description. The original road committee was formed because,
The original road committee existed in perpetuity, and it died out after George Mann died, and then, or George Mann retired back in the 90s, and then, back in 2008.
Standing.
Standing.
2001.
2001,
We went to
right.
the first meeting.
Right.
And
This is
basically,
January
this is to help
2002.
the camp roads
Right.
and the roads around the lakes. And to preserve the water quality. Yeah, initially, there no funding from the town was allowed on the roads.
Exactly, because that was
And
part of
this was the
funding for
point
private
in
roads.
forming the ordinance, so that we would have a way to get help to these roads. We've got 25 miles of roads around our lakes, and they're being taken care of by committees. Some of the committees are doing very well. Many are not. Oversight is needed if you want to protect what you
water.
have.
Right, and then they had
Yeah.
a road length and width they had to go by in order to qualify either for the town to take over or for them to maintain to be private. That's what that road committee.
That's the Class B and C
And
stuff?
we-
Exactly,
Okay.
that's the class A, B, C, and D, and I
Right.
think there's
Right.
also an.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at
And we
the
examined the
warrant,
roads, and we approved them prior to them
Right.
going to
To the
town
town meeting,
meeting.
Exactly.
Peacock Road, we walked it, our committee was the one that put in the recommendation. And that's what we were
how your road
for.
committees
Um,
formed, and that's how come they get maintained the way they get maintained now, is because everybody on them roads gives so much to maintain and deal with the roads, because you can't use public money for private
Right.
roads, and that's what that was all about
Okay.
back then.
yeah, there's a
So-
fairly clear directive on January 2002, Article 14, about forming the standing
Right.
road committee.
That was,
What it was
I think the
for,
wording is reestablished, right?
Oh, yeah.
yes. And so what has happened since then, though, is a little bit more nebulous, and whether obviously it hasn't maintained the same purpose. It was actually formed to come up with recommendations to the 2002 annual town, the 2003 annual town meeting. And then a few months later, in June 2002, there was another warrant article to postpone that for another year. So it was supposed to be 2004, but I see no record that there
I
was
can
any kind of a
clarify
report.
that, Paul.
Yeah,
The-
please.
The word, what's the wording because I wrote that article, what's the wording?
Reestablish.
Reestablish was a recollection of what the road committee had been up into the 90s, okay? At that time, the institutional knowledge remained in the town meeting of what the road committee had been doing. Everybody knew what we were talking about at town meeting when we said reestablish the road committee as we had known it for many years, okay? Obviously, a lot of that institutional knowledge is now gone, and that's why there's a need to draft an ordinance to establish that common understanding within the body, because it's no longer here. Most people have forgotten what the road committee did then.
If you read the MMA letter, they answered this question to the town. I don't know if you've got a copy with you or you do,
Is that from
but I do.
Stoltz?
We posed this question, what
That
does
was
the...
specific to our town or just
Specific to
generically?
our town, and with all of the information you probably have. And they sent back an answer to us,
Based on what they had
based
read.
on what
town
we had
meeting?
given them, which was everything we really had. And I don't want to try to paraphrase it, but it's available.
Well, I
will get
haven't
it
come
to
across
you.
that yet.
I will get it to you, because I think they spelled it out very clearly about who could call meetings and what it was all about. So I'd be happy to get it to you.
But we can redefine any of that too.
Sure,
in an
absolutely, and we
ordinance,
can change
need
the
to.
ordinance.
But it's good to start with
And get in
something.
to help these roads. That should be the main purpose, I feel, of this committee, to help these camp roads. You have people that have no idea what kind of gravel to put on their road. They don't know who to hire. They don't know when the job is done, whether it's been done properly. There's no oversight. That's not right. And this is 75, 80% of our tax base. They deserve help. And where we can legally help them, we sure should. That's my feeling.
Thank you very much. I totally agree.
There are a lot of issues to look at here, a whole mess of issues, and many of them are quite contentious, and that's why it takes time to build.
But you can't just plop a committee in the middle of all of this.
No, absolutely, no, you can't.
Okay, you just can't do it.
So basically, the idea is to gather information, figure out what needs to happen, get an ordinance, get a warrant article at a town meeting to get the more official thing rolling, but at least there'll be some raw materials to work
Draft an
with.
ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
It'll take a year. It'll take a year to
Right.
get an ordinance before the town meeting that everybody is happy with, or that everybody can live with, let's put it that way.
But it's not gonna start at this town meeting. You know, it will start at the next special town meeting, or maybe the next annual town meeting, but somewhere in the future. My concern was just trying to rush something through. And so-
Exactly, because that's all we've been doing for the past few years.
So the idea is to do it right,
Right.
do it thoroughly, involve the people of the town in a discussion, and not have a lot of, FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
You have to do it that way, I totally agree, because
I'm going-
the voters created the two commissioners. So we have to work with what we have, and that is...
Will, we had a commissioner for every half road there is in town. Years back, they used to auction off the road commissioner job at town meeting. Will you take care of this piece of this road, and how much you gonna charge to do it?
I'm talking,
We've reduced it.
reduced it by making sure, the Supreme Court of Maine also helped with that one, I think.
I would like to apologize, because I kind of jumped down the committee's throat here. I had been led to believe that this committee was being formulated to draft an ordinance.
Well,
And,
that idea was tossed around,
okay,
but I think
all right.
we needed to backstep and go, why
think you
did
did
the
too.
people want the
Yeah.
committee?
Yeah.
And that's
I mean,
where
we
the
know,
survey
I think
idea.
we
that's-
know we need one
Right.
if
Yes.
we're gonna continue to have a road committee.
Absolutely.
But there's that question of, do we want a road committee?
Absolutely.
People who voted for it,
Absolutely.
including me.
Yep.
To keep it.
Yep.
But obviously, you don't want to put any effort into writing an ordinance if you're not certain you're going to have a road committee.
Correct.
So that's really the first question.
And the other thing is, just be sensitive to the perception of who that committee is responsible to. And if you're going to build that consensus, it's got to be a committee that is constructed by the town meeting, for the town meeting, and responsible to the town meeting to do anything.
Right, and that would be
Okay.
the next committee down the road, authorized by town meeting, which is not this one.
I'll get out of your hair. Thank you,
Thank you.
Madam Chair. And again, I apologize if I've gotten off on the wrong foot here.
It's much better to hear about it now.
Well,
Yes.
that's why I'm here, okay? And have a good time. I'm going to go home and have supper now, and maybe
Thank
a
you.
glass of wine.
Thank you, Tom. I might do that myself at some point.
I didn't ask Ms. Hartman if she wants to say anything else. She's a very knowledgeable person.
Cindy, do you have anything else to add?
Do you have anything else to add, Ms. Hart?
No, not really.
Technically, I'm just public, I just know what happened back when, that's what I was talking about.
Institutional knowledge.
Exactly, maybe.
Thank you. Do you want to talk about just
Well, I do
the
have,
questionnaire?
I have a quick question.
I do have maybe one.
Okay,
The road committee perhaps can do the things the road commissioners are unable to do or don't have time for. The bridges are one thing that really need to be addressed.
right. And so that would be one of the questions on the survey is, do you find that the road committee they're there for support, for resources?
Well, why don't you ask them what their road problems are? Rather than asking them what a committee should do, what do you think the problems are on your road? What are you dealing with? What do you see? You overlay that comments with an inventory and you'd have a really good place to start.
I think everybody who's looked into this, at least in terms of the material available from DOT, would probably agree that somewhere along the line, the original committee back at in the decade of the 90s and the beginning of this century started with an inventory. And that was a tremendous undertaking. It took how many months, Ms. Hart?
They took almost a year and a half, if not
Just to
longer.
produce the inventory. Now, the inventory's been lost. We do not
My
have-
understanding, yes.
Okay, but that is a basis for what is the state of the state. What is the state of our roads?
Is the computer on which that data was lost still around? Does it exist? Because it could possibly be recovered.
Dave Winchell has it on his computer, his old one. And,
But if it's still lying in a corner somewhere, it's if this hasn't been done, it's possible that a few $100 could fix the problem.
And retrieve that information. And if you got that back, you'd have a wonderful
Right.
report card. You could then, because the segments would be the same, although the way they're doing it now has changed. But still your GPS.
But my understanding, though, is there was like a hard drive crash or something, right? Or something,
No, I believe it was just, well, I don't know what happened to the.
something wrong with the
Town
computer,
hall.
but it could
But
possibly
David
be
Winchell
recovered.
did have it on his, and I think they just put it in the attic and haven't used it. But we would be able to take that information off and at least have that as a bare bones start. You're still going to have to redo the whole thing.
Right, but my impression was that there was an actual physical computer issue, then they had to go back to a backup, and the backup was not what it should have been, so the data was lost, but if we take
The data
a,
was on it when I saw it.
Okay.
We brought the
that's
man who did
worth
the
re-asking.
program down from the DOT. He went over to Dave Winchell's house, he viewed it on his computer. What he didn't have with him was the disk to enable to take the material off. He mailed that disk to Shannon Winchell, and at that point, I was going on vacation the next day. When I came back a couple of weeks later, I was told that, well, I got the disk, brought it over to Bill Catanzi, because he said it was an older computer. He had the computer that could view it. And he said there was nothing on there. And then I heard, gee, the computer had crashed within the couple of days that,
and that's kind of what I heard,
Yeah.
but if it
But,
crashed, then it might just be that the data was
I think
considered to not be readily
somebody that
readable.
knows what they're doing would probably be able to get the material off. And the gentleman that wrote the program was the one who came down and viewed it. I think he has written since then. He'd be interested to see. I think he'd help, he'd come down and probably help get it right off that computer for us. That would be a wonderful
Is that
place
Jerry
to start.
Douglas?
Yeah, no.
No,
Don Ram, I have it written down.
okay.
But he did the whole program for the DOT. So he's the guy to get.
Worth asking that question again. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, certainly anything that can bolster the baseline of our material,
Yeah.
would be an awesome thing.
Absolutely.
I have some suggestions about the questionnaire thing.
Okay.
I also found, and I know that I had heard earlier that there's really nobody that has written a road committee ordinance.
Right.
But I've actually found some interesting stuff out on the infamous web that I'd like to at least make you guys aware of this evening, if not necessarily go over it. So how do you want to do that?
Well, I'd like to ask a question before we start on that, and that is a little bit more about the questionnaire. This would be sent out to all voters?
No. It would be placed in post office, town hall, library, school, for people to pick up and return.
So one of
I
these
don't
take
think it's.
one kind of things?
Yeah, like they
Okay.
did for the comprehensive plan years ago.
Okay, okay.
And maybe announce, at each of the selectmen's meetings at the end, that if you're interested, you can go to this place or that place, pick it up?
Right,
Okay. I mean, the advantage there is you're not expending town money
yeah.
Right.
for that,
could even
other than to
post-
make copies.
Put it on the municipal site, and they can download it,
Ah.
print it at home.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That's where I'd get it.
I guess my question again is though, we have commissioners, we should build on the commissioners, because I don't think the commissioners are going anyplace, because the voters have already reiterated their desire to keep things sort of status quo as far as the commissioners. The next question is then, they created the commissioners, the selectmen have been very miserly as far as giving funds to the commissioners, at least in recent years. I think because deep down inside, there's been antagonism just between the selectmen and the commissioners. Both of them have not been happy with the other. And as I said before, if the voters have created it and want to keep it, that's perfectly fine. We ought to be able to do like many other towns do and have this type of a system. But the voters then need to be presented with a list of possible duties. And then, at that point, we can decide, okay, then what role will the committee play in terms of the duties that have been outlined by the voters? Are we going to assist the commissioners in effecting the duties that they have been asked to do? Are we going to be picking up some of the other items that the voters said that they didn't want their commissioner to do? Are we going to have some sort of permutation and combination of what the voters have placed down as far as they want duties for these people to perform? I really and truly think that we ought to use the system that's in place, and that would be to go back to the voters and say, fine, you've created 2 commissioners, we totally feel this is cool. However, now the second part of this is, what do you think the commissioners ought to be doing for you?
I think if you unduly or unnecessarily, without absolutely needing to, and I think we'll find out later if we need to or not, start talking about road commissioners and what their duties are, I think that number one, you're gonna be pushing a lot of buttons out there that, oh gee, we're messing with the road commissioners, and I don't think that's our job here, to mess with road commissioners
No, it's the
per se.
voters' job.
Okay, but yes, I think we may need to skirt around that if we find that the road committee is supposed to be doing certain duties, and, you know, obviously, we need to figure out if that's something the road commissioners would be doing or not. But personally, I'd kind of like to keep anything having to do with road commissioners at arm's length unless until and unless we find out that we really need to examine that a little more closely. And I grant you that maybe we would have to do
I
that.
guess my next question is, what do you expect the commissioners to be doing now as far as responsibility?
That's not our job.
No, I'm asking you just as a personal.
I don't really have an opinion to offer
Okay.
because I don't think it's part of what we need to be discussing.
Well, I agree that it's the voters who need to decide that.
Sure.
And then the committee can then be formed to fill in the spots where your lists of things that they ought to be thinking about are put, okay? If the commissioners are not required by the voters to handle bridges, then that will be something that the committee may want to handle as far as the overall.
Well, and then, of course, defining what the word handle means.
Well, handle would
I
be
don't think that, you
as
know,
to what to
nobody's gonna be
do
rebuilding
in terms
bridges.
of whom to contact, letters to be sent. The commissioners, I don't think, want to get involved with a lot of administrative work and writing state legislators, the Department of Transportation of New Hampshire, and everything or putting pressure on the Maine Department of Transportation in terms of resurfacing Milton Mills Road between Orchard and Godding, which is so bad right now. We can put pressure on them just by letters being sent to the right people. That would be something that perhaps would help the commissioners, but they wouldn't have to deal with if it's not on their list of duties. But I agree with Tom. In New England government, the voters have chosen this system. Now, the question is, the system is not quite complete yet because we've chosen the commissioners, but the voters forgot or weren't presented with the idea that the commissioners have to have some sort of a duty list.
Well, I'm reasonably certain that the commissioners know what their duty list is. I'm also reasonably certain that it's not written down anywhere.
Yeah.
I did see when you were talking about, you know, the having a job description and ordinance, we actually I think, one of these town meetings that I have in front of me here, there was actually ordinances put forth for planning board, zoning board, and selectmen. So there are ordinances out there in our town that describe the duties, the functionality, et cetera. I did not see any, at least in that particular town meeting, for road commissioners. It wouldn't surprise me if there's one out there, although I don't know of any,
I don't either.
an ordinance for road
I
commissioners.
wasn't-
So yes, I grant you that perhaps that would be a good idea,
It
to
would
have
make-
one.
It would make.
And if there was one existing, it would help us now,
It
but
would
there
make the
isn't.
job of making a committee to truly be supportive of the commissioners and not somebody, I think in their
Right.
mind, dictating what they ought to be doing.
Right.
Well,
And
I
it would
just,
make the committee
most
a lot easier to form.
jobs have a job description.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
I feel the road commissioners should have a job description.
Yes. And it should come from the voters. We should ask the voters
Right.
what jobs you want your
It could go on the
commissioners to do.
survey. And
That
when
would be
the committee
excellent.
forms, if the voters say, yeah, let's have the committee do a job description.
Well, I guess the question is, do we want to, granting that that would be helpful to have, as we speak, an ordinance for the road commissioners, it would help them, it would help the town, it would help us in this particular task. Do we want to think about saying, okay, maybe there should be a second warrant article in that same town meeting to come up with an ordinance for the road commissioners, not to micromanage them, but to help
Not to micromanage.
guide what their job description is, and obviously they would need to be involved in that process of coming up with it after that town meeting to that special commission that is supposed to be doing that.
Yep, I agree.
I mean, is that really what we're talking about? Having a second warrant article that says, okay, here's a warrant article, people of the town, do you want to have a special commission to write an ordinance for the road commissioners, just defining what their duties are, and the road commissioners would be involved in that process, as would that town, called commission.
Yep.
And then a second warrant article at that same town meeting, whenever that is, that would do what we already knew about when we sat down here, which is to write an ordinance, a second ordinance now, to figure out what the road committee should be doing, and those two processes would presumably help each other. They would dovetail. You would know what the road commissioners'
One thing-
responsibilities are, and then you would know how much of that, or some other subset, well, how much of it is overlap, how much of it is unique
Yeah,
tasks
Exactly,
that the road committee might
Exactly.
be doing.
exactly. And you might want to make it even simpler by having the road commissioners put their ideas down first.
Oh, yeah.
They're saying, well, these are the things that we think we ought to be doing, and these things here we think the committee ought to be doing, and these things here we think the selectmen ought to be doing. Okay?
So are we talking about two questionnaires or one compound questionnaire, because they're sort of related?
They're sort of related because the town also voted to keep 2 commissioners. Why is that? Kind of span
Well,
off on a questionnaire
My
based on.
perspective at the time was, it works.
It works.
Why throw away something that works, in a manner of speaking? Democracy works too, but, and we know it's a good system, but it isn't always fun. But, in my opinion, it works,
Don't
and
change
some of
it.
the alternatives that were being proposed are just a bit scary, in my opinion. Anyway, so if we have a questionnaire, then I guess we're having
We definitely
two
need to-
focuses now,
Yeah.
two foci.
I think we've agreed that we need to put on next year's town warrant or a special town meeting, whatever comes first, an ordinance to ask the town if there should be a committee to write an ordinance. Or it has to be if a warrant, I guess, what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say.
a warrant article to ask about a warrant.
Yes,
Making
ordinance.
sure
An
that we
ordinance.
say that the input should be led by the present road commissioners. Okay, they ought to be able to say, these are the things that we think we ought to be doing, and these other things we don't think we should be doing. I think they have a right.
Absolutely, they should have very definite input.
Yes.
Having it led by the road commissioners, I think I have the same problem with that as Tom had about, any of this being led by,
Well, it wouldn't necessarily
the
have to
selectmen.
be led. It's, if the road commissioners think that snow removal, de-icing, repaving parts of the road for whatever reason are all their duties, and they agree that that's part of their duties.
Yep.
But they don't think bridges ought to be, they don't think that state aid roads should be included in this, they don't think,
Yep.
Okay, then, everyone, if they're agreeing to this, then the ones that we really have to worry about are these other ones.
well, yeah, and certainly a good starting point is going to be a brain dump of the road commissioners, and basically just put in writing what they are currently doing.
Or what they think they ought to be doing, if
Correct.
they had the budget to do it,
Right.
okay?
And that would help to get everybody on the same page at some point,
Exactly.
Yeah. So, all I have is ideas about the one thing that we sat down to do, but I think it makes sense to to kind of make this a little bit broader than it started out being. Again, without, hopefully without butting heads at any point, that I don't think there's any intent here to have an agenda, to force anything down anybody's throat, and here I'm talking road commissioners, and I'm talking town body. All above board, just trying to get things done and do the right thing.
The smallest input will probably come from the selectmen, because it's the voters who created the commissioners, and therefore the responsibility of their having to have some sort of a job description also should come from the voters. Again, as I said, but we have a whole huge list, I don't know how big your list is, of things that commissioners can or should do in the state of Maine. Now, many of these things, as far as liaison with the planning.
Yeah, I haven't come
all sorts of
across
stuff.
any
The
recommendations at this
guidelines for
point.
road commissioners.
Guidelines for commissioners, there's a whole bunch of things that are in there.
Craig, do you have anything to add?
I think I came here a little unprepared for the dynamics. I didn't
There's a
really
lot.
anticipate
So how
that.
much is your head spinning at this point?
It is.
You might be able to help us
yes.
sort of,
Well, I didn't really
consolidate.
anticipate the problems that some people might have with the optics of what we're doing and the contentiousness of it.
small town.
I just wonder, to what extent are we reinventing the wheel here? I'm sure other towns out there have addressed this.
There are a few towns that have road committees, and towns that don't have any road committee. So we are sort of unique. You'd have to do some digging. Stonington does have, no,
No, I don't believe they do.
they're Public Works.
Yeah.
But a lot of
Most
it,
towns have public.
Most
works.
are Public
a
Works.
lot of it has to do with the road commissioners and what they're willing to take on and accept as responsibility. And then a lot of towns, as Ms. Hart just said, have public works commissioners.
Right.
And they have a huge array of responsibilities, of which the commissioners of the roads just take a portion of it.
Right. So I don't know, maybe it might be useful just to look at what other people are doing and what's working.
Funny you should say that.
Yeah, we were digging, and MMA has a few guidelines and,
Yeah, so I hadn't come across this, because I originally wasn't targeting road commissioner stuff, but guidelines of road commissioners come from the MMA. I also found establishing a road committee from Maine Townsman in April 1991, and it's sort of a pithy writing, multiple pages of, why a road committee is a good idea or bad idea, how you can risk discussing such a thing in Maine town floors because it can always be contentious. Really good stuff here. I also located, along the ordinance realm, a road plan committee ordinance, the town of Chebag Island, Maine, and this actually went in November 16, 2016, so it's relatively new. So here's an ordinance that
I
we
see
could
road
start.
plan. I like the plan
start
in there.
with. Yeah. Road Plan Committee Ordinance. So it has title, purpose and authority, organization and administration, duties of the committee, road plan, authority of the committee, amendments and severability, and it's only 3 pages long. So that's a good set of bones, I think, to
In
build
that
on.
particular town, where did the commissioners have their position? Out of the voters or out of the Board of Selectmen?
Let's see, organization and administration, membership. The committee shall consist of 3 to 5 members who shall be appointed by the municipal officers. No technical experience is required, but members must commit to understanding MDOT guidance. So again, it's a starting point. If we're saying, gee, we really prefer town meeting versus having power with a selectman to do this, that could be changed, but.
Whether the commissioners work for the Board of Selectmen as a municipal department.
Appointment notice, quorum,
It sounds like.
duties of the committee. Okay, so evaluate the town's road system and submit an updated road plan to the Board of Selectmen by the first regular selectmen's meeting in December of each year. The road commissioner, singular, shall review and submit the plan to the Board of Selectmen at the first scheduled budget meeting for capital planning with a recommendation that takes the plan into consideration. So it looks like the selectmen pass it on to the road commissioner, who then reviews it and feeds back information. So, this is one of many possibilities, but it's the only one I found out there. And it's only 3 pages long. So that's, I think, the secret sauce that we're shooting for. And, we would have something to work with on that committee that would be appointed by town meeting from a warrant article that doesn't exist yet,
Yes.
okay?
You said that backwards very well.
So just to be clear that we are not writing ordinances, this ad hoc committee are not writing warrant articles, the selectmen would be doing that, and we're just trying to get to the point where there's something to be put on, I guess now, 2 warrant articles, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's, I think there was one other thing that I had found, and that is, so Buckfield website has just a web page that has road committee, and it lists the current members of the road committee, and then just a brief summary of what the road committee is in Buckfield, which is a different town from the one that had this ordinance. The road committee is a 5-member committee appointed by the Board of Selectmen, again, the selectmen, to advise the board on road issues and assist the road commissioners in developing a plan to maintain the integrity of our town roads. Their meeting schedule can be found on the calendar of meetings and events, which is located on the homepage on the left sidebar. So, short and sweet, that's what they feel the road committee does. Obviously, they may well have a more detailed.
But again, it sounds as though in both those instances that the commissioners are under the Board of Selectmen as a department head.
It sure
I'd like to see-
sounds like
Yeah,
that.
I would like to see a town in Maine that has the system that we have, and there are towns in Maine that have this system, where the voters are the responsible party and the commissioners are accountable to the voters and not accountable to the selectmen.
Well, and an ordinance would then clarify the whole chain of command thing, as it is
Well,
perceived.
if we have this thing, if the town has made this decision already and reiterated it, then I think we ought to start with the basis that we are going to have, at least at the present time, 2 commissioners who are responsible to the town voters and not responsible to the Board of Selectmen. I think use what we have and use it well. No one will feel offended. Right now, there's so much animosity because nobody trusts anybody, nobody wants change, and everybody is unhappy about their own little bailiwick in the whole process. And I just think that we're never going to get anything unless all 3, the voters, the committee, the selectmen, and the commissioners are able to get this new idea that we're not out to get anybody, we're not out to be resistant to any change. Obviously, that's present right now, and it shouldn't be, and we should use the system to sort of make things quiet and cool and get input and do it the way the system presently will allow us to do it, which is using the voters. It's the only way we have right now.
Oh,
Evening,
good evening.
Law and Waterhouse. As I see it, your first problem is you have approximately 2,200 registered voters in the town of Acton, okay? The town of Acton, last year at the town meeting, voted to re-establish the road committee, okay? Again, as Dr. Williams has pointed out, without any guidance as to what is the road committee supposed to do, okay? You can't go back to the original establishment of the road committee, which was mandated to
Classify the roads.
classify the roads, Class A, B, C, D,
Yeah, been
what
there,
road's
done that.
private, et cetera, okay? So we really are talking incorrectly when we say reestablish the road committee, okay? Because it's a different road committee. When that first road committee did their job as far as classifying the roads, et cetera, their job was done. Committee should have been dissolved, okay? We beat that horse long enough. So you got 2,200 voters. You need input, because based on the way the town is set up, we have 2 road commissioners who are elected officials. They're not appointed. They answer to no one but the town, the 2,200 voters of the town.
Exactly.
Okay? Never seen 2,200 people in a town meeting, ever. You won't ever see 2,200 people in a town meeting. I hope I'm not upsetting people. But that's the way town meetings go. You know it, I know it. We're lucky if we get 80 people at the town meeting to go over the warrant. We need suggestions for what this committee is supposed to be doing. Correct?
Which goes back to the
Yes,
survey.
which goes back to the
Which
survey.
goes back to the survey.
Yep.
In an
So
effort
you've got to,
my brain shuts off at 7:30 PM. So in an effort to get this over, I'm not over with, but to move on, let's move on to survey questions.
yeah, that's the biggest thing. You know, you got to establish, what do you want to hear from the people? Okay, you already said it. You know, the town. Tell us what you want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not the commissioners,
Right.
the road committee.
The road committee.
Okay? Because you already told the commissioners, you got the job. The only drawback, or the only, what term am I looking for? The only stick that you carry, okay, with your road commissioners is to withhold their funds. You can't tell them what to do, because you don't have anybody that is over them except the town body. That's it. Please.
Well, and you can fail to re-elect them next time
That's
around.
true, when their term is up.
But again, it's the town body.
The town body has to speak, okay? Hopefully, we get more than just 50 people that, you know, heck, if you get 50 people answer your questionnaire, I think you're gonna be doing damn fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay? And I almost would consider suggesting a mass mailing. Every registered voter gets a copy of the damn thing mailed to his address. Because putting them at the school, putting them in here and there, you're not gonna expose everybody to them.
Well, I tend to agree.
And I understand, you know, that a mailing could be a little bit, you know,
Well, I agree with what you say sufficiently to say that I will donate whatever funds are necessary to get a mailing out to everybody. So,
'Cause, you know-
again, it's not on the town,
Yeah.
it's just
You know, it's
getting it
just,
to
you
the
know,
people.
you gotta get it to the majority of the voters. Because I don't think just putting them at the trading post, at the school, in the town hall is gonna expose enough people so that you're gonna get. Now, you're still gonna get people that are gonna get it and go, "Kit," in the garbage.
Right, I think it wouldn't hurt to have some lying around.
Yes, absolutely. But I think,
But,
you know,
yeah, I agree,
I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waterhouse.
So back to the survey.
Yeah, so I'm still on the fence about expanding to even talk about road commissioners, because it might be inflammatory just because of its nature. But it may be somewhere we have to go based on what happens here.
It depends what you want for the questionnaire.
Right.
What would be the best end result of a questionnaire sent out to everyone in your minds?
Solid ideas.
Would it give substance to what the committee should be doing?
Which committee?
So
The road
the idea
committee.
is, the town voted to keep the committee.
Right.
The survey is, why did you want this committee? What did you think this committee's job was? Was it
Down a
If
hole.
it's not above, please explain what it was.
Comments, yeah.
So leave a
Yeah.
comment section.
Just sort of crawling in their
And
brains.
then, from there, we collect the data and decide,
And then
wow.
say, okay, so what is going to be the best outcome that the voters will say, what options are we gonna give the voters to put in there?
I think
Can
in
we
terms of,
assume that the voters assumed that the committee members would make this decision themselves?
We'd like to know that, though, because they're the power.
Well,
well,
when-
I think the voters, okay,
What-
so, and I was among them, I assumed that the road committee would be doing whatever things the road committee did in the past, they would be doing more of same.
And that it
But
already had its
apparently there
members,
is some question as to
and
what
there
that
was-
is.
The road committee tried to meet a couple of times, last fall?
Yes, we did.
And it seemed like everybody came in with their own idea and what they wanted to have done, or what the committee should be doing, and the road commissioners felt like they were being micromanaged, and it just was not working out well. We weren't getting anywhere, heads were butting, and so we said, well, wait a minute, what is the description of the road committee? And we couldn't find one, except for something that disbanded, and in the meantime, members had come and gone, so it never really was the original road committee back when people decided to keep it.
That's right.
So the article in 2015 to keep the road committee or not keep the road committee, that was just an article, it wasn't an ordinance, it was sort of a polling, essentially, legally. So if it turned out, and this is more of a question than a statement, but I'll sort of phrase it as a statement until it comes to a question mark at some point. But if it turns out that this questionnaire, that the returns pretty much state, after we kind of lay out, obviously, we're going to be laying out a little bit more information than we had at town meeting when that question came up. And I don't think there was really any background at that time. So we lay out some background. We basically ask, if they still want it after hearing what we have to say briefly. And if they say, gee, I think my opinion at this time, now that you've explained what they do and what their confusion is, gee, I guess I don't really see any reason to have a road committee. So I would vote no if that article came up again. So if we have a lot of those, would the selectmen say, maybe before we go any further, we need to put another one of those articles on there? And maybe have a public hearing even to discuss it before town meeting, so that we don't have another one of those lack of information things. Because it kind of surprised me at the time about, what the options were and why we'd want to keep them and why we wouldn't want to keep them. And but, so doing this, I think there's going to be a decision point from this process, is whether or not we maybe don't want to continue with a road committee. And if that's the case, I think the selectmen are gonna have to ask the town body again, right? And I guess I'll go with a question. It wouldn't be illegal or improper or anything in 2018 to have a warrant article basically saying what the one in 2015 said. Sort of a straw poll, right? Would that be reasonable?
That would be reasonable. But I feel like these surveys are going to come back having answers.
Okay,
What they
meaning
think the road committee-
yes, and this
Yes.
is what I think they should do.
Yes.
Okay, and that's fine, in which case we'll devote whatever energies we need to move forward from that point. But just to say that
Just
could
depends
happen.
on how you write these things. And I think the commissioners ought to have participation in looking and helping to invent the various questions you want on the questionnaire. It should be
I certainly think
just like
it should be run by them.
just like the selectmen
Very
have
least.
some, well, if they're not part of the questionnaire process of development, they're going to say, and I certainly would if I were one of them, this is all something that the selectmen are backing. They need to be participating and saying,
I could remove myself from this committee. I feel like I'm only here as an original liaison.
The selectmen are going after. It's
Right.
something the town stated.
Yes.
If the
Yes.
The road commissioners that we elected, shall I stand?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I'm sure the audience
I'm
down
sure
the
they
road
can hear
when this
me.
is broadcast will
But,
appreciate
you
it.
know, if the road commissioners, God, I had a gem of a thought. Yeah, I know, light's gone. I understand what Dr. Williams is saying, and I also understand that the road commissioners, you know, do feel like they are micromanaged, both at the selectman level, warrant and finance, the whole 9 yards, okay? They do not feel that, they feel like everybody's trying to tell them how to do their damn job.
And the
Right.
fact that they can't do the job that they'd like to do because they're not getting enough money to do it.
Accepted. But they equally have to accept the fact that the town, the same town that voted them in as road commissioners, voted to keep the road committee, okay? So they should accept the fact that the town said, we want this road committee, so let's all work harmoniously together. Okay?
Yes, yes.
I don't want to do your damn job. I don't want to do your job.
Right.
Okay? I'm here to help you, and I'd greatly like to help you. It's for the town's benefit. But until, until everybody comes to this like thought process, it's going to be beating heads.
Exactly.
Right.
And unless they're participatory.
Correct.
and
They
making-
should definitely have some input in
Yes.
regard to what questions,
Anything
Town
that has the
people are
word
asked.
road in it,
okay?
Yes.
certainly should have the buy-in of the road.
Absolutely,
Commissioners.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And
I'm here to
again,
help.
ask the road commissioners what they think they ought to be doing and say, do you agree that the road commissioners should be doing la, 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 la? Yes. These are other items which many road committees or many road commissions in the state of Maine perform and list those. Who should be doing this? Should it be a committee? Should it be the selectmen? Should it be a mixture of the two, or should it be the commissioners doing it? If we can even get the list that they agree upon solidified, then put in the other criteria that we all have other items that many of the road committees deal with, and find out what the voters want to do with those. I mean, the voters don't even realize that we got 3 bridges, 2 of which are falling apart, and only one of them is really the responsibility of our town. The rest of them are due to state or 2 states. Okay, most voters don't know that. Most voters heard that we have a Class C category on the Brackett Bridge down here on Milton Mills, and we're now to 1-lane traffic.
Okay. We're not gonna solve all the issues
No.
tonight, but I do feel like we need to end the meeting soon.
Okay.
So maybe we should talk about the questionnaire.
Right.
That sounds like an idea.
Do you wanna not finish this, but like, correlate through email?
We can,
Dr-
but again, we should be CCing the commissioners.
Okay,
Keep them in it. If there's any way that we're going to get real cooperation, they
Do
have
the
to.
road commissioners use email?
One
They
does
have
not.
it.
One does not. Mooney does not. He doesn't do anything with
so
computers.
he can pick something up in his box.
We can send it to his box or through Jen to make a copy.
Yeah.
So I have just a few scribbles here that I came up with during the selectmen's meeting. Sorry I didn't have 100%
Oh, that's okay.
focus on the selectmen's meeting.
You've read all the articles.
Well, you were just pretty much going yes, yes, yes anyway. So, just to get a thought, so if we're gonna be sending things to people and we're gonna be expecting some results, you know, I know the number I think I heard was like 10 or less questions. I think that's way too many.
I agree.
Yeah. 5.
Five.
So what I came up with is just basically an intro, with, you know, when the road committee started and why. The fact that it has rolling membership at town meeting every year, a list of its accomplishments, basically what the road committee has done over the years and when. So you get a feel for how often they're called, you know, and do things. And also, I think it would be very helpful to have, in this questionnaire, have already taken road commissioners' opinion of whether, you know, whether they think a road committee would be useful to them or not, because I think in general, a road committee would be advised, they are advisory, but are they advisory to the road commissioners, to the selectmen, to both?
Or to the voters.
Don't know, but it's advisory.
Yeah.
To whom? Okay? So then, a question, are you currently in favor of continuing the road committee? So this kind of throws away the question of what they vote, if they were at town meeting in 2015 and what they voted.
Yeah.
Throw it away.
If you have a long,
So yes, no, and DK.
if you have a
Okay.
long precept before it, they will not.
Not long.
They will
Not
not
long.
read it.
Not long.
Okay.
So their answer to that, are you currently in favor? Yes, no, don't know. So don't know, obviously, they don't have enough information, right? So what do you think the duties of a road committee should be? Check all that apply. So there'd be a small bullet list, you know, 8 or 10, and I would suggest we sort of troll through, various writings that we find on various web pages about road committees that are out there, ordinances that are out there. They probably have a list of things. We could put together something. And then at the end, other, one line.
Yeah.
Put whatever you want.
The first thing we should do is.
And that would
have
be
the
it.
Road commissioners tell us, the designers of the questionnaire, what they think they ought to be doing.
The road committee?
The road commissioners should be listing all the things that they
And
think
what
we
is
should
that,
be doing.
what is that gonna do?
Because then the question is, do you agree with the road commissioners that these duties are the responsibility of the road commissioners, yes or no? And then go through all the other stuff.
Disagree,
Disagree, go ahead.
disagree.
I
We're we're
If you put the
combining
road
too many
commissioners
things.
on the spot, you foster nothing but further aggravation. Okay?
But if you ask them what they think they ought to be doing and
They
put that
don't,
in.
I'm gonna tell you
I don't-
right now.
I don't think-
Neither one of them feels that they have to explain their duties to you at all, sir.
Not to me, to the voters, it's gonna go out to the voters.
You are a
Our
voter,
voter,
okay?
I am too.
There's a,
The only crossover here between the road committee and the road commissioners is the concept, which has not been nailed down in stone yet, mixed metaphor, sorry about that, is the concept that the road committee may be advisory to the road commissioners. With the exception of that aspect of this, the road commissioners are not necessarily really fully involved in this document. Although I grant you, and am very unequivocal in that they should have a hand in drafting what we're doing here before it goes out, because they are road commissioners and this has to do with roads. And it would be premature or presumptuous, shall we say, to come up with something and send it out to everybody in town that the road commissioners have not seen and have not vetted.
It should have their blessing
Yes.
entirely for all 5 questions.
Yes, agreed. But that doesn't mean that we need to, in so doing, delve into an ordinance for road commissioners or any of the duties of the road commissioner. That may come up, it may not. But to say that we have to include that, I'm not comfortable with that at this moment.
May I suggest I will get a copy of the MMA letter to everybody, because I think that will really clarify things. And perhaps you should have a meeting with members that have been on the road committee and see what they did and their reasoning for it. And also copy all these members of this committee of what you're doing, because we are elected members and we'd like to know.
You're talking for the
The
copies of stuff?
current road committee members
Past road
should know.
committee or current?
We're currently elected. My term is up in June, I think others go on beyond that. But
And you have
the road
contact
committee is still
information?
alive and active and interested in bridges, and we were the ones that approved roads.
Yep.
We were the ones that went in and recommended Peacock Road. We walked the length of it, we made the recommendations. That's what we were for, and I think this will spell it out if the purpose of the committee has been lost. Beyond that, I think this is the committee that could work and get you contacts with the DOT to get a class going here this summer for your private roads. They're running one to how to take care of gravel roads. Anybody on a gravel road that's having to do it should be there. Our road commissioner should be there. Anybody listed in roads should get this education. And mainly we were here because of the private roads and the camp roads. That's who needs the help. We can get money to them now. There are legal ways. That's what the committee was for.
Thank you, that's very good advice.
Thank you. Yeah. And that's actually a bullet item for, duties, get MDOT training of various types. And I suppose it could be other entities that put it on, right? Is it just Maine Department of Transportation?
They call themselves the local roads.
Yeah, the local road center.
Yeah, local
It's
road
being
center.
headed by Bob Stevens now, but Jerry Douglas would be the one for RSMS, and he would come down, and when we first did it, he came down, taught the class here, and right at the town hall, and we went from there. And he will do that again, but I don't think you can ask anybody to do that amount of work without being very sure that it's respected and
Won't get
and
lost.
kept.
Okay, so that's definitely a bullet item. Anyway, that's kind of the long and the short, mostly short, hopefully,
Yeah.
of my suggestions for
Okay.
the questionnaire.
So one of the other bullet items I was thinking of was support as an inventory or research, as in bridge repairs. To support the road commissioners.
Inventory is just really vital, the basis of all the work.
And what are we really talking about when we do inventory?
Well, there's the road inventory for the RSMS, but there's also inventory for, when the RSMS system's in place, there's a way to track how much sand salt is being taken out of the shed.
And is that something a road committee would be messing with?
Well, didn't they say they didn't want to put the,
Any way that we could make the budget work better and
better instead of
farther.
overdrafting,
Yeah, that's a big overdraft this year.
big overdraft? To get a grasp on the budget so that we can budget clearer.
So that's the roads inventory for that?
Well, the
There's
roads
two
inventory helps to put down, you take every road in the town, and it's gonna be marked in segments. And it was reviewed back in 2004,
Which was that?
the inventory that you all did.
Yes.
And that's the thing that's missing in action, right now?
Yeah,
That's one
part
If you
of
have-
it perhaps could be recovered from, and I paid to have the guy come down the first time, I paid for him to come back to get that off there and have a place for the town. We need that information.
But that involved at the time, just to recap or make sure I'm understanding, that involved not necessarily problems with the computer, but just coming in with a disk and saying, okay, I know about this program that's on there and the file structure that's on there. I'm gonna use this to offload that data so that I can bring it in and centralize it somewhere and put it somewhere else.
Exactly.
And that got stymied by actual computer issues involving a hard drive or systemic
Oh,
issue
yeah,
of
yeah,
something.
But I think Dawn would like to crack at that computer. Apparently, when the disc was mailed to Shannon, apparently, I don't know what happened, but when I got it back, there was nothing on it.
Okay,
Okay, so I feel that.
'Cause there are ways of recovering
we would have
things.
them down, and if they get out the old computer, I still have that disc, we can put it in, and that's where you want to start.
Ms. Hart, that represented how many months of work on the part of your
It was
committee?
about 6 weeks of work with four, and 4 people have to do it.
Four
When you do
people
the
for
inventory,
6
it takes
weeks.
4 in the car, and they have to be pretty much the same people. And it was hundreds of hours if you added all 4 of us, the man hours. Every day it was recorded on, Pam recorded it on her computer and also on David Winchell, so we'd have a backup.
And this involved both surface, width of the road, shoulders, yes or no,
Road.
culverts, condition?
We went even further. We evaluated every culvert.
Every
We went
culvert.
down, we measured them, we noted the condition and what the material they were made out of was. Because if you're able to deal with the whole town and you know what your condition is, you know in 2 years you're gonna need X number of 12-inch culverts, you can buy for the whole group. You save money there, for the whole town. And this is it, it's just been too fractionated.
So with this system, the support that the road committee that, is what I'm saying, is that they didn't want to put the stuff into the computer, any information, they didn't want to log anything, any data entry, so that's something the road committee would do, possibly.
The road committee should do your whole inventory, then it should go on Kenny's computer. When Don came down, he went down and looked at the town computer, and all this information would go right on there. And then that's a permanent record. As work was done, you would add it in,
Right,
and it should be kept downstairs with the planning board computer.
okay.
It's land use.
And any grant applications or searching for grants,
there-
it could be support that way.
That's another thing, yeah. There's an AWA grant committee now, our road, Abbott Road is involved, Lakeside Drive is involved, but this is something the town could be doing. And there will be a lot of, hopefully, we're gonna have infrastructure money available. We should be right there in line for our bridges and for the roads around the lakes.
That's AWWA is the one that's doing that right now, right?
Yeah, AWA is.
Yeah. May I make a suggestion, because it's 7:30?
Yeah.
And you're going to turn to a pumpkin. We all are.
My brain melts.
Perhaps we ought to go home and just cogitate and,
Can you draft something like, get a draft going and an email thread?
yep. I'll need some contact information.
Jen should have everything. Did
Jen
you
has
guys
it
ever
all.
get road ordinance committee emails?
No.
No, just warrant and
No,
finance.
that's all right. She's got my home address.
Okay,
but you can send it.
So on the road committee,
Yeah.
I would assume though that that the town hall has contact information for all the
Yes.
members, correct?
yes.
Well, yeah, the current members.
So, yeah, we can get all that out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree that, a fairly broad set of folks who are seeing this going on would, that would help to defray some fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
And just give clarity of how to move forward.
And who knows, who might have some suggestions, to make whatever we come up with as good as it can be,
And again, one other thing is the duration of your term on the road committee. And whether or not, if you become a member of the road committee, what education you should be attending, sponsored by MDOT and other agencies,
That's right.
RSMS, should you be required to attend so that you can get a better picture of really what's going on. That should be also a part of the committee.
right? That's actually a couple of bullet items of duties of the road
Yes.
committee. which people may or may not agree with.
Right.
Yeah, although I don't know, I mean, sort of like selectmen, I mean, you really, if you haven't done it before, it's probably important that you at least get some running start in your participatory activities by going to all the things that are offered up in Augusta and elsewhere. I mean, and DOT has Sanford on their list for the southern region of Maine as far as their lectures, and they're very, very, very excellent.
So where do we go from here?
Adjourn.
Adjourn.
So you're gonna draft something to
Yep.
get us going, and Jen has your information?
Yes.
Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn? I don't even know, is there a term in?
Did we even have?
We did not open.
There's no
We are
order in
adjourned.
this,
Good night.
unanimous decision.
yeah.